The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Take a deep dive into ARC's Direct Connect program, NDC. Hi, I'm Judy Howard, the Manager of Customer Experience and Training here at ARC, and I'll be your host. Presenting today's session, we have Shelly Younger and her team. Shelly is ARC's Director of Airline Retailing and Strategy and the Head of Settlement. And she'll be introducing her team shortly. But before I hand it over to Shelly, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. This is an interactive session. We want you to ask questions. This is the time to do it. We have all the experts here on the webinar this afternoon, and you can do that by going over to the right-hand side of your screen into the control panel. There's an area that says questions, and please type those in. We will be asking those questions and interjecting them throughout the presentation today. We'll also leave some time at the end for additional questions. However, don't worry, any questions that we don't get to, our team will be reaching out to you individually to make sure that you get all the answers that you need from today's webinar. And the other thing I just want to make clear is, because this is a question that comes up all the time, this session is being recorded, and in the next few days it will be posted on our ArcCorp.com site under Webinars on Demand. And of course, if there is ever any questions on where to locate that, you can always reach out to me. You have my email address, jhoward@arccorp.com. And without further ado, Shelly, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Judy. Really appreciate that. And I want to welcome and thank everyone for joining us today on our deep dive into ARC's Direct Connect with NDC product. As Judy mentioned, I'm Shelly Younger, Director, Airline Retailing and Strategy and Head of Settlement. And I'm joined by two of my colleagues. The first colleague, Cassandra Kilcar, but everyone calls her Cassie. So you'll hear all of us refer to her as Cassie, is a senior analyst and Direct Connect onboarding specialist. So she's the person that you want to make your best friend when you have any NDC and Direct Connect questions. Next up, I'm joined by Paige Blunt, Senior Manager, Direct Connect and One Order. And Paige has graciously agreed to help us manage our Q&A. So she'll be breaking in periodically with questions. And then, of course, as Judy mentioned, any questions we don't get to during the session, we'll be happy to follow up with you afterwards. So next, what we're going to cover today is we're going to very, very briefly, because again, this is a deep dive, we're going to do a Direct Connect overview. Then we're going to really get down into the detail and talk about how Direct Connect with NDC transactions are processed through ARC, what you'll see in IAR, and Cassie will be doing most of this, but you're going to see screenshots, and we're going to talk about the differences between Direct Connect transactions and GDS content transactions. And then, of course, as I mentioned, our Q&A. Now, our target audience here is for those agencies that either are already participating in Direct Connect with an airline, or you're getting ready to participate in Direct Connect with an airline. So it's a bit more advanced. And if you're asking yourself, what is NDC and what is Direct Connect, then we might be going a little bit too in the weeds for you today. Happy to have you maintain and still stay on the webinar, but we did kind of a basics and an intro webinar back in August, and we'll be happy to send that link over to you. You can also find it on our website. So we recommend you go back and go through that basic one first, and then you can listen to this one since it's being recorded. So we're actually gonna take it away. All right, again, very, very brief overview of Direct Connect. In airlines, like we've been talking about for years, this is not new. So I'm probably not gonna tell you anything you don't already know, but airlines really want to become more like retailers. They wanna offer a consistent and personalized shopping experience across all of their channels. And whether or not the passenger or the traveler is shopping on through the TMC, through the OTA, through any other kind of agency, through your website, through a corporate booking tool, through the airlines.com on a mobile device. They want all of that experience to be the same for the passenger and the customer. They also want more control of how their products are displayed and priced, and again, that consistent experience. And lately, you might have been hearing about dynamic or continuous pricing and bundles, and Direct Connect with NDC really sets up the plumbing to kind of make that happen. Now, historically, achieving all of these things has been a little bit more difficult to do in the third-party channel with the technology, with the EDIFACT technology that's been in place. And of course, NDC is set on much newer technology, XML and JSON for those geeks in the crowd. And so this gives the airline the ability to get their product out the way they want, when they want, and how they want. So that's really the best way I can describe Direct Connect. Cassie, I'm going to actually turn it over to you now to review the airlines that are participating in Direct Connect and kick us off for the deep dive. So take it away.
Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm kind of always the liaison between business and technical. So I'm going to do my best to keep it at a level for all, experiences. But I am going to jump in to this slide, which kind of walks you through how ARC can receive Direct Connect transactions from an airline, and that's in one of two ways. The airline may choose to send their transactions direct to ARC, or they can be sent via Farelogix on behalf of the airline. So you'll see here on the screen, the timeline shows all airlines that are currently sending Direct Connect transactions to ARC, whether direct or via Farelogix. As you may or may not be aware, Farelogix has been connecting airlines and agencies using NDC for many years. There are many aggregators in this space, and ARC is truly aggregator agnostic. But the reason we're calling Farelogix out specifically here is because they are transmitting files directly to ARC using ARC neutral form code ranges. So all airlines listed on the left-hand side under the Farelogix logo are currently connected to their platform and have settled at least one transaction through ARC. The airlines listed over on the right-hand side are transmitting their files using airline form code ranges directly to ARC. The box on the left awaiting takeoff are the airlines who are currently in the onboarding process with ARC or are waiting in queue to begin their testing and onboarding efforts. So I am going to do a high-level walkthrough of this table. There's a lot of information here, but the most important takeaway is that one size does not fit all when it comes to Direct Connect and NDC. So when implementing their Direct Connect channel, each airline, oh, sorry about that. For some reason, the audience view changed. So when implementing that Direct Connect channel, each airline makes decisions that kind of result in variations in their setup. So I'll jump right into what we're looking at here in this table. The far left column on the screen is a few of the business rule selections that may vary from airline to airline. That includes file format, either SPERF or RET, the form code type being used for Direct Connect transactions, which transaction and payment types the airline chooses to transmit to ARC, and how modifications and errors are handled in IAR. Along the top row, we have a list of all airlines that are currently in production with ARC Direct Connect, which is sort of ARC's program connecting this platform for airlines, plus Farelogix on the far right, whose ARC configuration does not change airline to airline. We're going to jump into more detail on a lot of these business rules later on in the webinar, so we'll just leave it at that high level for right now. All right, so one of the top questions we get asked is, how can I tell the difference between a direct connect transaction and a GDS transaction in IAR? That's a great question. On the list screen in IAR, there is a system provider drop-down menu, and that allows transactions to be filtered by system provider. And in the case of Direct Connect and NDC transactions, each airline is considered its own system provider in ARC's system. So the airline direct providers here can be grouped and filtered together in the drop-down menu, as you can see here, Airline Direct All, or you can choose, if you want to see the Direct Connect transactions for just one particular airline, you can filter by just choosing that airline. One important thing to note, obviously in the previous slides, we talked about Farelogix. Farelogix does not fall under that Airline Direct umbrella in this drop-down menu. And since they're sending ARC neutral form code ranges, our system views them similarly to a traditional GDS. So filtering on Farelogix will show you, and is really the only or best way to differentiate their direct connect transactions from other GDS transactions in IAR. So thinking back to a couple slides ago, if you're working with an airline that is listed under the Farelogix logo, you can isolate those direct connect transactions by filtering on Farelogix. Okay, I'm going to circle back to form code ranges, because that is another way to determine if a transaction is a direct connect or a GDS. So looking at the form code range here on this screen in the list view, you'll see two different form code ranges for tickets. So as shown here, the ticket numbers for direct are issued on airline stock, and GDS transactions are issued on ARC neutral stock. To find a full list of ARC neutral form code ranges, we did provide a link here at the bottom that will take you to the Industry Agents Handbook, and you can jump right to page 193. Now again, it's worth mentioning, sorry, I will continue to mention it throughout just so that it's kind of clear what you're looking at and what you're seeing in IAR. Farelogix is the exception to this rule because they're using ARC neutral stock to issue direct connect transactions. So those ticket numbers will look similar to GDS transactions.
Hey, Cassie, just a question.
Sure.
If you, in this particular slide, you're not showing a system provider selected, you're just showing all of this particular airline's transactions. If you had chosen a system provider, would we only be seeing one of these transactions for the the airline ticket stock?
Correct. Yes. So if you had selected, in this case, Iberia as the carrier, so from that system provider dropdown, if Iberia were selected, it would filter out from that list any other transactions, whether that's other direct connect transactions or GDS transactions page.
Great, thank you.
Yep. All right. And then perhaps the easiest way to identify a direct connect transaction is the Airline Direct checkbox, which is located on various screens in IAR. On the financial details and itinerary screens, it's located in the top right corner. And for refunds, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, it is located near the center of the page, just below the ESAC field. And from there, I'm going to turn it over back to Shelley to talk about the mystery of missing direct connect transactions in IAR.
Thank you very much, Cassie. I appreciate that. So again, some of the questions we get asked pretty regularly are why are my direct connect transactions missing from my IAR report? And Cassie, go ahead and go to the next slide. So let's look at a few of the reasons why those transactions might be missing. First, there are airlines that actually, to get their direct connect transactions to us, they actually go through third parties. So for instance, you have the airlines that are on the screen here bundle up all of their global direct connect with NDC transactions, send them to IATA, and then IATA kind of parses them out, sends them to the right BSP, and for US point of sale transactions, we get those, we get a file directly from IATA. And because of that sort of kind of stop in the middle, if you will, most of the time we're seeing those transactions load into IAR approximately 2 days after a transaction issuance. Normally, agencies are used to seeing GDS transactions, which are loaded the day after issuance, with some exceptions, of course. But again, for Iberia, Air France, KLM, British Airways, you will likely see a day delay. So it's not necessarily always that the transaction is missing, but the transaction might be a bit delayed. And one of the ways, obviously, you can tell that is at the top of the screen, the 2 red boxes, you will see the date of issue and the entry date. And again, those are likely to be 2 days apart. So that is one of the reasons you may not see transactions show up as early as you expected them to. Now, next up are same-day voids. In the US, especially the GDS channel, you're used to seeing both the sale and the void transaction come to ARC and be loaded into IAR. Even if they occur, of course, on the same day, we get both of those transactions and we load them into IAR. In the direct connect channel, when a sale and a void happen on the same day, the airline has the choice on what to do here. So they can send us both the sale and the void. And in that case, we'll do what we do for GDS transactions, which is load them into IAR. They may actually only send the void transaction, which is similar to what happens in the BSPs around the world. And in this case, because our system is sort of designed around the sale and the void, we don't have a matching sale if all we get is the void. And so we can't, at least right now, load that void transaction into IAR. So in that case, you will see neither the sale or the void. And then, of course, the last scenario is they would not send, if the sale and the void happen the same day, neither transaction may actually be sent to us. And the result is the same, of course. We would not load those transactions directly into IAR. So those are, that may be why you might be missing transactions.
Hi, Shelley, I'm sorry, there's a question that's come in.
Sure.
How do you reconcile the ARC report if the invoice is in your back office, but the transaction's not in IAR until another day later?
That's a good question. There are a couple of things there to think about. When you're initiating the contact with the airline through Direct Connect and those NDC messages, in some cases, you may have contracted your aggregator to send you some sort of back office file, or you may be doing it yourself if you have the technology, and you will have to adjust that reconciliation to say, I might not get that transaction for a day late. And so you will get it on the BOS file if you're downloading the BOS file from ARC's IAR, and you may just have to wait for that transaction to load and then reconcile. Now, the other kind of flip side is if the sale and the void are not in there, that will probably cause some challenges in your reconciliation. And longer term, we're looking at options on what to do in those cases, and would love to get with some of the agencies attending here to get your feedback on how you would like us to move forward in some of these situations where we don't load the transaction, for instance, a void only into IAR.
A follow-up, Shelley, if that voided ticket isn't showing up, then how does an agency have any record of the transaction? And I think that is something to work on with your airline that you're working with.
Yes. Yeah. It's, again, it's that however you're connecting to the airline through Direct Connect, you may in fact be able to have your aggregator send you data around those transactions and load into your back office. So there are many aggregators out there today, and I would highly encourage you reaching out to them and seeing what they can offer in terms of getting you that data, especially right as the ticket is issued or the refund happens or the exchange or whatever, you know, the void that you're doing. You can download that data into your back office. So we would very much highly encourage you to talk to your aggregators that are connecting you to the airline.
Thanks.
Any other questions around that? Good questions.
Not right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, we're looking to change some of the ways that we're managing these transactions that either don't show up. So again, we'd love to have feedback from this group. And if you would put in the chat that you would like to talk with us, or of course, happy to reach out to us directly and let us know. All right, next up are error corrections. And once again, agencies in the GDS channel, you always, at least at ARC in your IAR report, have the opportunity to correct a transaction that's loaded in error. In the Direct Connect world, it works a little bit differently because the airline is actually the one that's pricing and issuing the transaction, where in the Direct Connect world, the GDS is pulling the content together and requesting the ticket to be issued, but the agency is kind of in charge of issuing that transaction, where in the Direct Connect world, the airline is doing all the work. And so you would hope, and it's really improved over time, but you hope that all transactions that come to us, then there would be no errors. I wish that was the case. We do see some errors from time to time. And the airlines have the option whether or not they want the agency to correct that error in IAR for a Direct Connect transaction, or they can choose to have any transaction that would have normally loaded into error be sent back to the airline on a rejection report that we provide that airline. And the airline can then will review the transaction. They will either do one of a couple of things. They'll either correct the error and resubmit to ARC, or the airline and the agency will have to work together as to why that transaction went in error and how the settlement of that transaction is going to happen. So luckily, we are not seeing too many errors anymore, so that's great news. The challenge is, of course, going to be if there is that situation where the airline chooses to get that transaction back on the error report, then that transaction will not be loaded into IAR. And so you might find some reconciliation challenges there. Once again, we're looking for feedback. One piece of feedback that we did get is there a way we could find a way to load that transaction into IAR, but without it actually being in your sales report? So find a way to show you the transaction without it actually being calculated in your sales report, since it's really sitting with the airline to be corrected. So we're, again, looking for feedback on that, the best way to get you this data. One kind of pro tip is for those of you that are familiar and use document retrieval service, DRS, you can actually go in and do a search on the initial instead of the settled, and you can actually see the initial of this transaction where we first get it, and we have not necessarily even loaded it to IAR yet. And so for those of you that don't know, in DRS, we store 2 copies of every transaction. We store a copy right as we get it from either the GDS or, in this case, the airline on the file. And then we store a copy called the settled copy after that transaction has been locked down and it goes through our closing process and is output to the airlines. So you can see some of these transactions that don't get loaded into your IAR report on initial. And if you're not quite sure how to do that and would like a demonstration, let us know. We're happy to show you very quickly how to view those transactions in DRS. So it's a bit of a shortcut. I know it doesn't solve all of the reconciliation issues that may be out there, but the good news I can say again is there are very few errors that happen right now. So that's the positive side of this. Are there any questions here, Paige, just before we move on?
Not now. Thank you.
Quiet crowd today.
I know.
Yeah. Now, payment and transaction types. Again, the airline has the choice on what they want to send through ARC for either reporting or settlement. So if they only want to send cash form of payment transactions to ARC for reporting and settlement, they can do that. And British Airways is one of those, is that example. Most airlines will send us both cash form of payment and credit card form of payment, even if ARC is not initiating the credit billing for them. If the airline is initiating the credit billing themselves, most airlines will just go ahead and report that to us so that the agency has it in their back office and can do reconciliation. So that's great for the agency, because then you have all of your direct connect with NDC transactions in one place. The other element here is the transaction type. Some airlines may come to us and say, hey, I want to start with sales and voids or sales and refunds only. So, or just sales only. And so they may start with like a phase 1, like TACA has, where they're only sending us sale transactions and they're not sending refunds or exchanging, or that functionality may not be available through Direct Connect yet. As you can see, it's a small list. That's a good thing. Most airlines are sending us all transactions and all payment types for reporting and settlement.
Shelley, there's another question that came through.
Sure.
This one is about a refund that processed an error. The question is that where would they find any ESAC code? Would that be in document retrieval in the initial? Or
Great question. Thank you. I love these. The airline, again, has the choice to send the ESAC code to us or not, because obviously it's the airline's own transaction. If you request a refund through Direct Connect, the airline is going to actually perform the refund. They have their own ESAC code. So in many cases, they've not necessarily have put that on the file to be sent to us. So you're right, you may actually not see an ESAC code even though the transaction has been refunded or exchanged.
Thank you. And a couple more, just a second.
Sure.
The first one says, how are most airlines processing commission incentive? In all the NDC channels that this person has used, there's nowhere for us to report that information. Therefore, we're not seeing it reported to ARC in any way.
Interesting. So the airline, of course, there's never one simple answer to that. So could be a couple of cases there. It could be the case where the airline is chosen not to offer upfront commission in the Direct Connect channel, and so would not be putting commission on the transaction for you. It could be that I know the schema supports commission, so it could be that for whatever reason, while the schema supports it, the airline may not be able to support processing commission upfront yet. Those are the two most popular reasons as to why we don't see commission. There are airlines that do allow the agency to go into IAR and put your commission in there. Cassie, if you don't mind, do you mind scrolling back?
Oh, I was just going to actually say the whole next section is actually about these, what is enabled in IAR. So that might be a nice segue.
Yeah, let's just do that instead. Cassie, if Cassie doesn't answer your question in the next section, feel free to happy to come back around and do it. And on that note, perfect timing. I'm going to hand it right back over to you, Cassie.
All right. So there we go. Okay, so one of the main, other main questions that we get are for agents that are issuing Direct Connect transactions, or even those that are not. You might notice differences in IAR specifically related to an agent's ability to modify a transaction. So I'm going to walk through the next few slides are going to have screenshots to kind of support this explanation. And just so you're aware, when an airline is choosing their business rules for their program, ARC offers 3 configuration options for those Direct Connect transactions. So moving into that, the first would be that all modifications are enabled. So this model will look most familiar to agents because it follows the same configuration as traditional GDS transactions. So this setup allows agents to add commission, like we were just talking about. So you'll see here on the screen that that box is available for editing. Also, of course, in addition to commission, tour code, waiver code, certificate, and ticket designator are all enabled for each transaction in this package. If a transaction is in error, Shelley kind of talked a little bit about this before in the last section, but the agent is allowed to modify the corresponding field or fields as you can do today with GDS transactions so that that error can be cleared. So that is enabled in this package. And manual entries, of course, as well. So that would be, for instance, adding a refund or an exchange to your sales report from IAR. On the left-hand side here, you'll see which airlines have selected this configuration. So Farelogix and all of the airlines that fall underneath Farelogix, Taka, Singapore Airlines, and Qatar. There are also another configuration option is allowing agents the ability to only modify commission. So this configuration inhibits all other modification in IAR. Transactions with errors, as Shelley mentioned, are not loaded to IAR, but instead returned to the airline to make that correction or to settle outside of ARC. And then here, as you can see, just like the previous screen, that commission box is available for editing, where everything else on the screen is grayed out or locked down. Also to note here in this package, no manual entries, like we talked about, refunds, exchanges, voids are allowed with this package. And on the left-hand side, these are the airlines that have selected this setup in ARC's Direct Connect. And then the final and third configuration option is full lockdown of a transaction. So since the tickets are being issued directly by the airline, some choose to inhibit all modification capabilities in IAR. The theory here is that the ticket would be settled exactly as it was issued. So these transactions in your sales report would be displayed as view only, as you can see here on the screen in that red highlighted text above fare, taxes, and commission. So if you see this, just know that that is a decision that was made by the airline to lock down all modification capabilities in IAR.
Kathy, I have a question here. One, there's a couple, but I'm going to kind of try to take them in the best order, I think.
Sure.
Sometimes the commission requires a tour code or a ticket designator. And if we add the commission, if we add commission, they'll allow the tour code that supports that commission. But in these no modifications only, assuming there's no way to do that, right? So if the ticket didn't have the ticket designator or the tour code, you would have no opportunity to add it.
That is a great question, and truthfully not one that I believe we've heard yet. And Shelley, please, feel free to chime in too. But our understanding is yes, that the tour code and ticket designator in this model, which is commission modification only, would be disabled. Only that commission field is allowed, but I want to give Shelley a moment here to chime in too. That's the first I've heard of that question, which is great. We always love to hear kind of what is impacting the agents and what those unique scenarios would be so that we can address it with the airline as well. Shelley?
Thanks, Cassie. So if that is the case and you're talking direct connect with an airline that allows you to add commission, but the proper tour code or ticket designator is not being populated on the ticket, you need to let the airline know as soon as possible. You can also reach out to us because we will also get in touch with the airline and see if there's any changes that they need or want to make to their business rule selections to support this, because obviously if you can't add the tour code or ticket designator and it's not added by the airline and it's required, that's going to be a problem. And we wouldn't want you to be contacted by the airline afterwards or not get your commission. So if you're seeing that's the case, please reach out directly to the airline as soon as possible and let us know as well. And we'll talk to, we tend to talk to the folks that are sort of the operating folks and the folks behind the scenes. We would ask you to get with your sales folks and we'll figure out a solution to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Shelley, because we hear often, IAR is a little unfamiliar to airlines, so sometimes they're not fully aware of the capability here. So I think that could even be a learning opportunity for them as well. So great suggestion, Shelley. All right, Paige.
Okay, another one, it's a little different than where we are exactly right now, but they're asking if a refund for an NDC issued ticket can be entered manually into IAR as a refund, or does the refund have to be generated from the carrier's NDC booking source?
So that's completely reliant on the business rule selections. So under this package here, all modifications enabled, the capability of adding the refund is enabled. So that means that they have the ability in IAR to actually create that refund like they would today with GDS. In that instance, though, we still do, require that EDIFACT message to come back from their e-ticket database. And in our experience, obviously, every airline is slightly different and their rules are a bit different. So we can't guarantee that an ESAC would be returned in that scenario, but these airlines on the left here do allow agents to create that refund in IAR. And then it kind of just follows the normal process from there for getting that ESAC and authorization.
And Cassie, I thought I'd just quickly jump in and say too that most airlines, I'm going to say all airlines, to be honest, in the direct connect world, are going to most of the time want you to go through that direct connect channel to do the refund. And so while they may allow it here, again, the behind the scenes where we normally go out and when you refund a GDS ticket, as long as the airline has set up EDIFACT messaging with our technology partner, we go out and get an ESAC code and bring it back, or we get an error back from the airline. So what you might see if you attempt to go in here and refund is you might see an error. And in that case, you got to go back through your direct connect channel and initiate the refund. And of course, if there are issues with initiating the refund through that direct connect channel, then we again encourage you very highly to get with the airline immediately. There might be a technology problem, or there could be something else that the airline needs to know.
Thanks, Shelley. There's another question that kind of relates to that, and actually it's more about that refund in error, like something came in, it was on the error report. The question is, would they fix that within the same week? Or what is the, what is the SLA for that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one, Shelley. We're in our little section here. So that is also up to the airline. We always highly encourage that they are returning those transactions as quickly as possible. So we encourage that they return it on like the next day or 2 days file later, so that it does fall within the same PED. But truthfully, that is up to the airline. That is the option that they've chosen, and what they do with that transaction is truly up to the airline. So in terms of the turnaround of when they might resubmit that transaction, or if they resubmit it at all, again, they may choose to settle that directly with the agency outside of ARC. So those are really kind of business rules and decisions that are determined by the airline.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right, we still have a few slides to get through, Paige, so I think we'll jet through a couple more slides just to make sure we're covering all the content that we need, and then hopefully we can have plenty of room at the end still for questions.
Great.
All right, so I'm going to zip through these. We went through those. So a great resource to understand each airline's configuration. So if you're asking yourself, obviously those slides, we listed which airlines chose which configuration, but we're not expecting you to memorize those, of course. So a great resource is our ARC Direct Connect website. The link is here at the bottom of this slide. And about 2/3 of the way down that page, we list each airline who's in production with ARC and their selected business rules. So on the left-hand side of the screen, again, you'll see the list of airlines that are in production. If you click on that plus sign on the right-hand side, that will expand that airline's business rules selections, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here in black. And I'm just going to quickly walk through kind of the information you're seeing here. Again, just really high level. You'll find the airline's name, 2 alpha character identifier, and 3-digit airline code. You'll see the system provider code assigned to the airline. This 4-digit code should also match the number listed in the IER drop-down menu that we went over earlier. The file type that they've selected to transmit to ARC, which forms of payment and transaction types are being transmitted to ARC, whether refund and exchange validations will occur. That's more of an internal thing for ARC in terms of whether or not we're going to our verification database, for those that may be familiar with that. And that's for refunds and exchanges. And then which IER capabilities are enabled. So the 3 packages we just went through on the right-hand side of this screen in black are what the airline has selected to enable and allow in IER. This list is updated as airlines are being implemented, so this is really a great place to find all the latest updates on ARC Direct Connect. And just so everyone's aware, we are going to be doing some kind of revamping over the coming months, so this might change a little bit, but this will still be a great central resource for any information on each airline's configuration and setup. Okay, we are in our last section, so you guys are doing great. I know this is a lot of content we're going through, but what else might look different in IER sales report? So that's a common question we get, and there are some other differences. The first being form of payment, where airline initiates credit billing. So Shelley kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but on the list screen, which you can see kind of in the center of this slide here, You might see an unusual form of payment type, which is XX, and this form of payment type will be displayed for any airline that's initiating their own credit billing. So if they are choosing to handle billing themselves, our system needs a way to identify that transaction and not run it through our billing process, which is why we have this unusual form of payment here on the list screen. And then on the financial details screen, so which is on the right side of the slide here, under form of payment, you'll see this XXCC-billing, and that would be replacing where you would see the typical credit card contractor and account number or masked credit card number. The airlines that have chosen to do their own credit billing are listed on the left-hand side here as well. And again, you can always find this information on our website as well. Okay, so we are going to get into a little bit of complexity here regarding exchanges. So just hang in there. There are some important fundamental differences, especially when it comes to exchanges that are worth calling out. So as you can see on the screen, you might see an airline direct exchange in your sales report that shows $0 for all the financials. Why would that be? Unlike the US, IATA BSPs report the netted amount of a new document as part of an exchange. So for instance, here, why we're seeing zeros on the screen is that this is an even exchange. This even exchange in kind of the typical US ARC model would be that the new document amount would be the full new document. And then we would be deducting the previous full document amount to equal whatever's left over. So in the case of an even, it would look similar to this, but we would have the full financials on the screen. Whereas with IATA and BSP, these exchanges are transmitted to us with the netted amount, which is 0 in the case of an even exchange. So you may see this, the financials might look different to you than obviously you're used to. And this also applies to add collect. So what you might see here for a new document that results in an add collect, I'll give an example just to kind of help visualize this. I purchased a ticket for $300 and I'm exchanging that ticket for a $500 ticket. That $200 add collect is what's reported to ARC in the case of these BSP exchanges. So you would see here, you know, whatever the base fare and taxes are, with the total being a $200 add collect. So that is a kind of very fundamental difference in how exchanges are done in IATA BSP and here in the US. So this might take a little getting used to in terms of your sales report and seeing these exchanges. I don't have a ton to add on the next couple of screens. I just wanted to give some additional screenshots to show that the old amounts here are displaying as $0 and old fare, old taxes, old total. And on the exchange summary screen, you will see new and old document as 0 with, and again, this is in the case of an even, as you could see at the bottom of the screen, form of payment even. So again, that's kind of a complex, you may or may not be aware of how BSP exchanges look. So this could be all new information for some of you or all of you. So if you want us to, again, as Shelley said, connect with you and walk through this in more detail and kind of explain what you're seeing in your IAR sales report, we are happy to do that. We also have a frequently asked questions page on that ARC Direct Connect website. You can find along the top navigation bar at any time the FAQs. You can also scroll to the bottom of the page in the still have questions section. The FAQ document is available as there as well. And this is just a great resource to kind of go through some of the more basic commonly asked questions, but we are also here to answer any questions at all that you have in specific. So our email address is here. Obviously, I'm sure we have some additional questions page. I just wanted to make sure that we touched on exchanges. We have heard from a number of agencies on that item. So just wanted to make sure we had some time to kind of walk through that. Happy to turn it back over to you for additional questions.
Thanks, Andy. Actually, I think they have now all been answered unless anyone would like to submit something now. I'm not seeing anything new. One question that came up when you see the credit card being billed initiated by the carriers that are doing so, and you see the X whatever it was, do you see the same thing in DRS? Do you see that same kind of coding, or would you not see that in DRS?
Yeah, so that is, Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we've done that analysis, and that XX form of payment is shown in the settled, and then in addition as to, how about initial, Shelley? I can't remember if we
yes,
XX throughout, but
yes, it's going to be shown. It should be shown in both. Happy to go in and again show you guys how to find that, but that CCXX and the billing, you'll see that unique form of payment in DRS.
Okay, yeah, okay. This CCXX is just a different thing, and just wanted to be sure it was all going to be shown the same way. Perfect.
Right. Yes.
I don't have any other questions. Oh, wait, sorry. Here we go. Is there any best practice for how to represent the NDC flight segment in the GDS? Some carriers do not want the status of YK, for example, and I'm not sure that's a question we can answer here, but I'll leave it to y'all in case you can.
No, that is actually not a question we can answer. We would encourage, again, it feels a little bit like a broken record, but this is where the engagement with your airline is really important, and your technology provider, whoever your aggregator is going to be, or kind of how you're getting those transactions into your back office or into your GDS. We would highly encourage a conversation between the airline and the technology provider. So that's unfortunately something we can't answer.
Perfect, thank you. And this is kind of a unique question. I hadn't even thought about it, but it's a great one. Thank you so much for the presentation. But could we have it in Spanish?
Oh, very interesting. Thank you very much. We'd love to go back and work with our team and put it in Spanish. So
yeah,
it might not happen.
I'm only partially capable of speaking Spanish.
Oh,
so
there we go.
Unfortunately, I would not be able to deliver this entire presentation in Espanol, but
we're going to have to get some help with that. But we're happy to go back and see what we can do. We understand the importance of having this in another language. So thank you very much. We appreciate that reminder, and we'll go back and talk to our team.
Yeah. And the next question, just about how do we get access to the recording? It definitely will be on the website. I believe Judy said it's under arccorp.com. Under our webinars, on demand webinars is where it will be placed. And I think she said a couple days.
Yeah, and Judy's going to come back on here in just a minute when we close out, and she can actually give a reminder about that.
Great. Anyone else? Last few minutes. Want to write in a question? Oh, here we go. Can the GDS be the aggregator, or is it recommended that all agencies use something other than the GDS?
That is going to be a commercial decision for the agency. So, you know, the aggregator is going to, each aggregator is going to have different functionality and different pricing. I think part of it depends on your technology chops. So if you're an agency that may not have an extensive technology shop, you may want to go with an aggregator that can provide some of those additional services to you. And if you're already getting a lot of your back office and information from one of the more traditional GDSs that would also serve as an aggregator, you may want to go with them. If you've got your own technology shop where you can do a lot of that yourself, you can integrate transactions from multiple sources and put all of those into your back office. So I think that's really often very dependent on your technology, what your setup is. So happy to have a conversation with you after this webinar. So happy to touch base with you on that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and one of the things, Paige, I have a question for everybody out there, actually, on that note about aggregators. One of the things that we've been thinking about, the team, Paige and Cassie and myself have been thinking about for webinar options in 2023 is, would you all like to hear from the various aggregators? Maybe even some that are a little less traditional than the GDSs playing the aggregator role, although we're obviously way more than happy to bring in the kind of top aggregators and see. So if you would like information, or you think that would be a helpful webinar, please put it in the questions box and say the chat box, and let us know.
I got a shirt
before I turn it over to Judy for closing.
There you go.
All right. I just want to thank you, Cassie and I both thank you greatly for sticking with us. And Judy, I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Great. Thank you, Shelley, Cassie. Great presentation. Thanks, Paige, for asking all those great questions. And like Paige said, this recording will be posted on our corporate site probably in the next couple of days. It will be, if you go to training and you click on that, it'll be on the right-hand side of the screen, and it'll be under on-demand webinars. If you have any trouble finding anything, and if you have any questions in regards to the webinar, you can contact me, jhoward@arccorp.com. And of course, if you have any questions in regards to this presentation, anything about Direct Connects, NDC, please contact, as Cassie has her slide up here, Direct Connects and the NDC team at ndc@arccorp.com. They're awesome, and they'll answer any of your questions. Again, I can't thank you all enough for taking the time to spend with us today to learn about this really important topic, to take this deeper dive. As Shelley mentioned earlier, if you do want to go back and really see the first presentation they did, I think it might be helpful for those more newbies. And that is also on our webinars on demand, and that was on August 11th. So, and again, if you have any questions finding it or anything, just please reach out to me. Happy to help. Any other questions in regards to the material that was presented, again, ndc@arccorp.com. Again, Shelley, Cassandra, Paige, thank you so much. We look forward to having you back again in 2023. For all of our audience, again, thank you for the time you took this afternoon, and have a wonderful, happy, safe holiday season. And please keep your eye out. We will have hopefully a fuller schedule of webinars getting up and running again for next year. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for a great presentation.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.